Eva Kor in the studio. We've been talking about Eva all morning, that she's going to be here, and she's here. Good morning, Eva.
Good morning. I'm so glad to be here.
We are so glad to have you here. You have an amazing story to tell. You are a Holocaust survivor, which is, there's not a lot of people that have that ability.
I am a graduate of the Auschwitz School of Survival.
I like the way you put that there. Tell people, I know your story obviously is probably long and has many details, but if there's like a shortened version of your story, tell people out there, I know there are children listening, that I told the story last night of the Holocaust to a young person who didn't even know what the Holocaust was. So tell people kind of what your background is.
My background, I was born in a very small village in Transylvania, Romania. There were 100 families and we were the only Jewish people. And when I was 6 years old, everything changed. The Hungarians occupied the village and Jews were persecuted, and there were lots of rumors that Jews were being murdered. And in 1944, we were picked up from our home, taken to a regional ghetto, and then put on a cattle car for an unknown destination. 4 days later, we arrived in a place called Auschwitz.
That's got to be, I mean, so you know, as a young lady, you had, like you said, as a young girl, no idea where you were going. And then when you got to Auschwitz, you didn't know what Auschwitz was.
No.
I mean, the name now is so infamous, and we all know what happened there, but you didn't know.
Yeah, but we could tell it was not a nice place because the smell hit us immediately, and within 30 minutes, my twin sister and I were left alone holding hands on a strip of land called the selection platform. My two older sisters and parents were gone and never saw them again. Everything happened very fast and with great brutality.
Man, I can't even imagine that.
And we had no idea what would happen to us, and we became part of a group of children, all twins. And our group was only girl twins, but there was another group with little boy twins. And we were marched to a processing building where we sat naked most of the day. And then in the afternoon, the processing began, which included tattooing the number capital A-7063. And my twin sister became capital A-7064.
So she has the tattoo. For the people out there that are just listening, you still bear that tattoo on your arm to this day.
Correct.
I mean, what do you feel like when you see that in the morning as you're getting ready?
Just part of who I am.
Part of life now.
Yes. I want to inform your audience, your listeners, that Auschwitz was the only Nazi camp that tattooed its inmates. Because people don't know that my husband is a 4-year survivor of Buchenwald, and he does not have a tattoo. So what was the reason that Auschwitz was singled out, I have no idea.
But you were singled out as a twin because they wanted to experiment with twins, correct?
They did experiments, and the experiments were a variety of things, among them hours and hours of being observed, studied, and measured naked. And the other part was injections of unknown substance, which ultimately killed many of the twins, and they were diseases and drugs. So they were testing to see if a disease would kill me, and I was supposed to be dead. According to Dr. Mengele's decision, he said to me one day when I was sick, she's so young, she has only 2 weeks to live. Now, he never talked to me, he talked to the other doctors. We actually, as human beings, we were not considered human beings. And so I was between life and death for 2 weeks.
And Dr. Mengele, he's very famous. I mean, a very famous figure to come out of the Holocaust. I mean, He was one of the big, torture guys involved in the Holocaust. I mean, it's a very well-known name.
He was considered God in Auschwitz because what Mengele decided, that's what happened.
And so such evil. I mean, did you comprehend as a child how evil it was, or was it more just confusion as a child?
Well, very fast, right at the arrival, that same night, I saw dead children on the latrine floor. which made it clear for me, and I have never seen anybody dead before. I was 10 years old. That could happen to my sister and me, and I made a silent pledge that I will do anything and everything within my power to make sure that Miriam and I will walk out of this camp alive. And from there on, I can tell you one thing, that the focus was always how to survive one more day.
It was just one day at a time.
One day at a time.
And then did you guys ever consider escaping, or was that just not out of the question?
Not in my mind. We were surrounded by very tall, electrified barbed wire fences, guard towers every 12, 14 feet, with a guard in it with machine guns. And if we escaped, I wouldn't have known at age 10, where would I go?
Yeah, exactly. You'd be lost in the woods somewhere.
I didn't even know where to go when we were liberated, and I was 11 years old, because the world was still a very scary place and dangerous place.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about that. So you were experimented on, expected to die, lived through that, and then tell us about the liberation and how that came about.
There was a lot of air raids that started in August of 1944, and they increased. And the only thing that I can add to that the airplanes that were bombing Auschwitz had the American flag on it. I could see that. One of the first ones that came was flying low. And that was very hopeful to us, because I did not know very much about the rest of the world, but we had an aunt in Cleveland, and the stamps on the envelope looked like the flag on that airplane. So I realized they were American airplanes and they were going to free us. And the air raids increased greatly, and by January 27, it was a full-blown battlefield. And everything was silent suddenly. And so we thought maybe this will be the day we will be free. But we didn't exactly know what that meant and what we should see and what should we experience. And a woman ran into the barrack yelling at the top of her voice, "We are free, we are free." It still didn't make any sense to me. So I went outside and I waited there, looked around for about 30 minutes, where at a distance I could see these were troops all wrapped in white camouflage raincoats. They were smiling, and they didn't look like the Nazis. And this is when we ran up to them, and they gave us chocolate, cookies, and hugs.
Wow.
And that was my first taste of freedom.
That's got to, I mean, I'm sure that chocolate probably tasted better than any chocolate you've ever had in your life. I can imagine.
Well, anything tasted better than what I had in Auschwitz. The food there was so despicable, I don't think it was fit for human beings.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't. And then that day, knowing that moment, once you got those hugs and that chocolate, knowing you were free must have been great. And then afterwards...
I still didn't know where to go.
Exactly, yeah. Then you're an 11-year-old girl, your parents are gone, it's just you and your sister.
And the war was still going on, because we were liberated in January, and the war did not end even in Europe until May.
So what did you do? I mean, the two of you.
We were taken to an orphanage, and that was a very unpleasant experience, because the orphanage, the people who ran it did not understand the trauma that we survived. We had dolls and balls in our rooms, and we had the whitest sheet that I could see on the bed. And I have not seen white sheets in quite some time, over a year. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't sleep on it, so I had to rip the white sheet off the bed. And I said to myself, don't these people know that I am no longer a child and I do not play with toys, which would have been nice for them to understand, the children who fight for their life. And I was never, ever again able to play with any toys.
Yeah, I mean,
the innocence of a child was completely gone.
I can imagine. I mean, yeah, the experience in Auschwitz completely would change. I mean, I'm sure it changes adults as well, but certainly it makes a 10 or 11-year-old child grow up pretty darn quickly.
Very fast.
I can only imagine. So then from the orphanage, what happened after that?
Well, we did not. They told us that they would take us to Palestine, and I wanted to go home because I wanted to see who else survived. So my sister and I came together when we came to Auschwitz with a woman who was in our ghetto. She had twin daughters, and we came from the same ghetto, so we wanted to find her so we could go back with her and ask her to come to the orphanage and sign some papers to say that she was our aunt. And she did. And from there on, we stayed with her for the next 9 months. We were in 3 refugee camps in the Soviet Union. And then in October of 1945, we arrived back in Romania. She put us on a train to our village. And then we approached our house. My heart was beating so fast. But the house looked very neglected. The weeds were very tall, and it didn't seem to me like anybody was there, and there was nobody there, except my mother's dog, Lily, was a little dachshund. I guess they didn't take Jewish dogs to the death camps, and there were 3 crumbled pictures that I found on a bedroom floor, and that was all that was left of my family. About 4 hours later, a cousin arrived who was sent there by an aunt who survived, who found our name on a list of new arrivals from the death camps. And so she wanted to take us into her house. She lost her family, so we stayed with my aunt for 5 years in Romania. In the meantime, Romania became communist, and freedom was still just a dream. And so in 1950, after 2 years of trying to get our visa to Israel, we finally left for Israel. They wouldn't let us take even our clothes. The only thing we could take was the clothes on our back. So my aunt made us wear 4 dresses and a winter top coat there, and I wasn't going to leave that coat there. I stood in line for it for 20 hours, and a riot broke out, so that was the coat I was going to take with me.
Yeah.
And then in Israel, we went to agricultural school. We worked 4 hours a day, went to school 4 hours a day, and I learned to say I love you in 10 languages. For your listeners, I know they're young people. We were children. Young people in our group was the 16 to 18-year-old group. They were children orphaned by the war from 30 countries.
Wow. What's so amazing, Eva, is after all of this, I mean, you're telling this horrific story of, being captured and being, experimented on and escaping and not knowing where to go and losing your family. And I mean, there's so much despair and negativity in this story, but yet today you speak about positivity and you speak about forgiveness. And to me, that's astounding that you can endure and go through what you went through and now be able to talk about forgiveness in any sense. That is incredible.
I think that the tragedy of all tragedies in the world, that people hold on to their pain for eternity. And whom on earth does it hurt? The perpetrators or are gone or don't remember or they don't care. And the victims are left with the pain and the trauma that actually often survivors of tragedies pass it on to their children and grandchildren. If I could teach one simple thing that I have learned and hope that somebody would at least try it, is to forgive those who hurt you, not because they deserve it. It has really nothing to do with the perpetrator. My forgiveness has everything to do with every victim having the right to be free from what was done to them. And the only way you can remove that burden from a victim's life is by forgiving the perpetrator. It's a choice.
I love that. I love I mean, because like you said, it's not, I mean, you're not forgiving Hitler. Hitler's not going to go, oh, well, Eva forgives me. Or anybody that did anything to you. They don't know that you're forgiving them. It's like you said, it's freeing. It's giving you the ability to do what you've done with your life since then, because you were able to forgive and say, that's the past. You remember it. You know about it. But you're able to move into the future and accomplish things because you're able to forgive for yourself.
And remove what I like about forgiveness, and I would like to challenge everybody to prove it otherwise, that it's a power that a victim has. What makes a person a victim? If somebody takes away our power to use our bodies and minds, and it's always done by force. Now, the only power after that I as a survivor have is to forgive them and to realize that I have that power. No one can give it to me. No one can take it away. It's mine to use it in any way I want to. It costs nothing. It is the most budget-minded, most powerful experience a person can have. So if you don't like the way you feel free, healed, liberated and empowered, because these are all the things that forgiveness will do, then you can always go back and take your pain back. I also tell some people, if they want revenge, the best revenge is forgiveness, because from the moment you forgive, whatever the perpetrators imposed upon the victim no longer has any power over them. And it's also the biggest gift I gave myself.
That's wonderful. I mean, such a wonderful story. And since you were able to forgive, you've done so much since. I'd like to mention you're going to be speaking tonight at the West High Auditorium from 6:30 to 8, and there's a silent auction that begins at 5:45, so people can help the cause beforehand by purchasing items at the silent auction and then hear your story live tonight. But you've done a lot more than speaking. I mean, you have your own foundation now that you've started.
A museum. We have a museum where we have about 5,000 visitors, mostly school children. They come there with their buses to learn firsthand that, for instance, in school there is a lot of bullying, and I would challenge those young people who are bullied. You might not be able to change the bully, but if you forgive him without even telling him, you are no longer affected. And the moment they have no effect on you, you are free from that, and they are going to stop bullying you. You can try it.
You're empowering yourself by forgiving them. That's amazing. And it's definitely very, very true. And so the museum you have to educate people, I think it's so important for all of us to be educated. I know that I was obsessed with Anne Frank when I was in school, and I studied that often. And I know that it was, I mean, on a level of 0 to 10 being full understanding, I was probably at about a 6. And then I had the opportunity to go to the Anne Frank house. And when you walk through that, it's like speaking to somebody like you. It really changes the way you see everything, because it makes it real. You know, it's not just reading a book
Well, they can
anymore.
come with me to Auschwitz. We still have a few tickets available. Go on our website, www.candlesholocaustmuseum.org. You will see the trip. We are leaving June 21, returning June 29. Walk the ground.
I can't imagine. It's so, and I understand, I mean, because of your forgiveness, but that just seems so crazy to me that you can go back to Auschwitz where all that horrible, horrific stuff happened to you.
Well, first of all, this is the cemetery of my family. Where I stand on that selection platform, this is when I saw the members of my family for the last time. So this, again, I can relive that moment. Second, it is a place where I lived through life and death. And last time I was in Auschwitz last year, I decided to dance the Hora, which is a Jewish dance, and circle and with some music on the selection platform. Why? Because this is where the end of my family happened. This is where I would reclaim what joy and happiness they have taken away from me.
Wow. You were, I mean, such a testament to the power of forgiveness. I mean, what it has done for you and the ability that it has freed you so much that you can dance and be joyous and happy in light of all the pain in the past.
Well, yeah. Can you imagine if all your listeners would take just one single idea, forgive somebody in their life who hurt them, and become a seed for peace, because forgiveness is a seed for peace, and pass it on to other people and challenge them to forgive somebody who hurt them. And actually, I would suggest that they should forgive everybody who hurt them, because if you have one or two people that you still are not forgiving, you are still a victim.
That's absolutely true. I think it's beautiful, your story, for one, so people don't think, well, I went through something that's, pretty bad, so it's hard for me to forgive. Hearing your story puts everything into perspective and makes people realize we none of us have been through anything nearly as horrific as you have, and if you've been able to overcome it and turn it into such a positive thing, all of us should be able to find some way to overcome that pain and forgive those people and spread peace, like you said, spread peace and love with the world and make it a better place.
Yeah, I think that it is an unwritten secret to world peace. Everybody's looking, how do we find world peace? Well, it starts with me and it starts with you. Forgive those who have hurt you, and you are going to have a very peaceful relationship with the rest of the world.
That's amazing. It's an amazing story, and luckily for some of the students from West High we have in the studio here, they're going to be going on the trip with you to Auschwitz, so that will be, I'm sure, a very eye-opening and enlightening experience for them. How many times have you gone back?
I think I'm losing track, but probably 17 times.
You've gone. Is it different every time, the emotions you feel?
Well, because it is different, since I share my story with different people, and the people themselves are a unique fiber that forms that group that goes to Auschwitz, the interaction between the people who go. Some of them save their money for 3-4 years, the young men from Canada, and others come from just maybe very wealthy young girl from New York who read my book, Surviving the Angel of Death, and she decided that it was more important to go to Auschwitz than go to summer camp. Wow. And convinced her mother to let her go, and her mother came also. So the fiber that makes up that group of young people, older people, history buffs, and some people who really, I think, are very, very dedicated to learning the lessons of what happened. And I can tell you one thing, that visiting Auschwitz with me is completely different than with the tour guide. The tour guides always focus on how many people were murdered there. And I say, why don't you focus on how many survived? We can learn nothing from the people who died. Mm-hmm. But you ought to talk to the people who survived and ask the question, in spite of Hitler, in spite of the Nazis, in spite of Mengele, and in spite of that miserable place called Auschwitz, how on earth did we survive? There is an important lesson in it. We didn't give up. And what I call the human spirit could not be defeated, even by the evil that happened there.
It's so true, Eva, and you are such a testament to that, to the human spirit, to not giving up. I mean, even in unsurmountable odds. I mean, when everything's stacked against you, when you're a young child with only your sister, not knowing where to go, where the war is, what's good, what's bad, being able to overcome all of that, and most of all, after it's all over, to look back and being able to forgive and turn your life into a life of inspiration, of motivation, of helping others. I mean, your story, like you said, focusing on the dead gets us nowhere. Focusing on you and what you've accomplished and how you've done it, I think really can open so many minds and so many eyes to such a positive life.
Well, thank you, but I want people who today are listening and might have difficulties and might be desperate to not give up hope, not give up on themselves, and just give themselves a chance to overcome it. Number one, not give up, and then when they overcome it, they can forgive and see how it works for them, because I believe it can work for everybody.
I think so too. I think it's beautiful. And Eva, I thank you so much for coming up this morning. It's such an honor to be able to speak with you, and I appreciate the time. And if anybody, I know our text line here, everybody is saying amazing. They want the book, they want information, they want all of this.
They can have the DVD too. There is a DVD called Forgiving Dr. Mengele. They can find it on Netflix.
There you go. Look for that on Netflix. And then your website for your museum?
www.candles, like the one you light, holocaustmuseum.org.
There you go.
Or you can Google Eva Kor.
Exactly. Look up Eva Kor and you'll find all the information. But tonight, the best way, and a once-in-a-lifetime experience, I think, hear Eva's story in person tonight from 6:30 to 8 at the West High Auditorium. Free admission. Go a little early. The silent auction begins at 5:45, and that's to help fund these students who are going to accompany Eva to Auschwitz in June. So, amazing story and amazing opportunity for all of these people who want to see you and hear your story in depth. Tonight is the opportunity at West High at 6:30. So be there. Show up a little early for a great seat. And Eva, I want to thank you for what you've done for the world, your inspiration, and then also just thank you for coming to Billings and sharing your story with us here. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Big J.
The Big J Show. Weekday mornings from 6 till 10 on Billings' #1 hit music station, Hot 101.9.